Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's World TB Day celebration. I should also inform you that we are webcasting this event, so hello to all of those who are following us on the web. My name is Kojo Nnamdi, and it's a great privilege to serve as your Master of Ceremonies for this evening's program. While World TB Day was officially yesterday, today and every day are also opportunities to raise awareness about the critical need to address this public health challenge. Tonight's program is designed to shine a spotlight on the progress that has been made in the global fight against TB and the work that remains to be done. We have a lineup of inspiring speakers who will leave you both engaged and energized to do your part in the fight against this deadly disease. As you will see on the program that was placed on your chair, tonight you will get a sneak preview of a compelling documentary on TB that will air this evening at 10 p.m. on PBS, and you will hear from the filmmaker himself. You'll also be inspired by the compelling stories of TB survivors whose courage will surely serve as an inspiration to us all. Leadership is what's key to advancing the diagnosis, treatment, and cure of TB. That's why we are especially thrilled to have our distinguished honorees with us tonight who continue to demonstrate their commitment to leading the way for a TB-free world. Later in the program, we'll present these TB champions with achievement awards in recognition of their inspirational leadership. You've just been, hopefully, enjoying delicious food and beverages. Thank you, Results, for sponsoring the open bar. You're not going to want to miss a minute of this program, so to make sure that you are still with me, so to speak, we're going to play a TB trivia game. At the end of the program, I'll ask the audience questions, and the first person to raise his or her hand and answer correctly will get, where is it, the World TB Day t-shirt. Don't you just, you go to basketball games, you pay $100, and then you fight over the t-shirt that they shoot into the crowd. Surely you'll want a World TB Day t-shirt. Come to think of it, why don't I just ask a couple of questions right now, just to see if you're prepared for this? Okay. Which Washington, D.C. basketball teams made the NCAA and didn't get past the first round? Oh no, wrong program. Wrong program, sorry. First question. How many people are missing out on TB treatment every year? If you know the answer to that, I hadn't even finished. The gentleman in front already knows the answer to the question. Question is, how many people are missing out on TB treatment every year? We have one answer here. Go right ahead, sir.
Globally, 1.3 million people.
Could you repeat that number, please?
Globally, 1.3 million people.
1.3 million people?
Yes.
That answer is incorrect. Let's see if we can find someone else here.
3 million.
How many people
3
are
million.
missing out
3 million.
on TB treatment every year? The answer here?
3 million.
That answer is absolutely correct. You get the coveted t-shirt. Second question. Which diagnostic tool has rapidly changed TB detection and treatment? Which diagnostic tool has rapidly changed TB detection and treatment? We have an answer up front. Let's get the microphone to the potential winner or loser of this contest. We will see.
GeneXpert.
Expert is the correct answer. You too get a t-shirt. This crowd is way too knowledgeable for me. Okay, that indicates that you are ready for a great event, so let's get things started. Please allow me to introduce your host, Dr. Ariel Pablos Mendez, Assistant Administrator of Global Health for the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID. Dr. Pablo Mendez entered the global health arena through his research on tuberculosis. As an experienced public health physician, he previously served as Managing Director at the Rockefeller Foundation, where he worked with international agencies and donors to spearhead the creation of the Global Alliance for TB Drug Development, which aims to shorten and facilitate the treatment of the disease in poor countries. You may find a more detailed bio in your program. But please, a warm welcome for Dr. Pablo Mendez.
Welcome. Thank you, Kojo. And I'm really honored to be co-hosting this event with many of my colleagues and my partners from Results, a long-time partnership, the Center of Global Health and Diplomacy, the American Thoracic Society, and the One Campaign. It is a pleasure to be here today with so many of our distinguished guests, friends, and colleagues who have come from near and far. And I especially want to recognize our congressional leaders for being part of the program and for all along making sure that this work carries on around the world. There are many of the accomplishments that will be mentioned here tonight, and the ability for many of us to do this great work are due to their belief that the United States should play a leadership role in helping others and saving lives from diseases like tuberculosis. So thank you, Senator Brown and Congresswoman Granger. We hope also we'll be joined later by Congressman Engel. And that leadership is, as we heard before from Kojo, the key ingredient. Everything follows. We who have been on the trenches of this and on the technical fight tuberculosis very much appreciate that support. I am also very much honored to welcome His Excellency, Mr. Hem Heng, the Ambassador to the Royal Kingdom of Cambodia. We will be awarding Cambodia's Ministry of Health tonight in recognition of the country's outstanding accomplishments in the fight against tuberculosis. Partnerships such as this exemplify how great things can be achieved by working together. And I think partnership has been the theme of tuberculosis work in the last decade or so. So congratulations, Ambassador. I also welcome our honorees, Dr. Richard Chasson, who will be accepting the Champions Award tonight on behalf of CREATE, an international research consortium that is measuring the impact of bold strategies for controlling AIDS and the TB epidemic. It's also nice to see producer Jessa Newman in the audience. And Jessa, welcome. And I look forward to seeing your documentary on PBS tonight. Welcome and thank you also to the families of TB survivors who are joining us to share their inspirational and moving stories. I'm also very pleased to have my dear friend, Ken Castro, an admired member of the TB community, Rear Admiral Ken Castro. He's here with us tonight. Ken will be retiring after 30 years of exemplary service at the CDC. And we worked for many years with Ken's leadership at the CDC in the United States and globally. So I look forward to sharing more about Ken's contribution in global health later this evening. Welcome, welcome, my friend. It is very nice to see so many of all the new faces of a community that has been growing. As Phil was just mentioning, it used to be that we were all just a few old folks, he says, 20 years ago. Now there's a lot of vibrant community enriching the fight against tuberculosis. And as many of you know, tackling tuberculosis is near and dear to my heart, having been involved in turning the tide against the disease in New York City with Tom Frieden and others, and also leading the first global report of MDR-TB and the work that led to the Alliance for TB Drug Development. I see many of the colleagues who made that possible, and I'm happy to see that new drugs are now reaching clinical trial stage, phase 3, and we certainly hope that they will work and make sure the treatment is shorter, simpler around the world. The TB community has a lot to be proud of. We have made remarkable progress against TB in those 20 years, in the US for sure, but also globally. We will achieve the Millennium Development Goal of halving tuberculosis deaths by 2015. Congratulations to all of you. Effective TB and treatment has saved more than 22 million lives over the past 2 decades. It's really dramatic how the work that you all do can indeed accomplish that. And I was commenting with Congresswoman Granger before, that one thing we do in global health is we measure things. So we want to measure the problems, and we also want to have evidence for the solutions and measure the progress, and the progress is indeed incredible. But there are many challenges. We heard about the 3 million who cannot be reached today, and we need to redouble our efforts to achieve zero TB deaths by 2035, a new post-2015 vision that we all should rally behind. And I think WHO and the World Health Assembly in this May will be championing that as part of their strategy. The theme for this year's World TB Days is indeed to reach the 3 million. And there are many reasons for that. Out of the 9 million people who get sick every year, 3 million of these are not getting the care they need. There are many issues, but it's mostly among the poorest among us all. We must do a lot more and make sure that no one in need is left behind. We know that tuberculosis is contagious, and we have to make sure that nobody is ill so that we can all be safe. Innovation will be essential, and there's been a lot of progress in the last decade. The new GeneXpert diagnostics was mentioned earlier, and the consortium that helped develop and deployed it was honored last year also for the work, has shown many promising results. In many cases, it's allowing us to increase the reach and the speed and the accuracy of both TB in HIV patients and those with MDR-TB. There's also hope that new drugs and eventually new vaccines will be the ultimate game changer in the fight against tuberculosis. We need to keep that up because tuberculosis, by virtue of infecting many people in a dormant stage for decades, may not go away right away. So this has to be a long-term fight. And as Kojo mentioned, I was a strong advocate for the creation of the Global Alliance for TB Drug Development. It's great to see many partners around the world in the pharmaceutical industry, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and many others, many of you here, working to that. The NIH has been a fantastic partner. I saw Barbara earlier. So we will need as much creativity also, not only in technology, but also in finding ways to reduce transmission of regular and MDR-TB in hospitals, in prisons, in communities. This is a simple way that was key to the success in New York, and is essential to contain MDR-TB, which otherwise is harder to treat, as we all know. Our achievements are due to strong global partnerships, advocacy, the US government-supported programs. In the 27 countries where USAID helps fight TB, we have already achieved 40% reduction in deaths. This is incredible. These are the hardest to reach populations, but there's still a lot more that we can do. Growing economies in many of the high-burden TB countries, BRICS and so on, is a positive sign. That means we need to engage our assistance in smarter ways to ensure that they can also contribute to treat their own population. And we are here to be a partner with all of the countries in which this fight is being fought. In short, we need to sustain those investments and the political will. And again, our honorees tonight demonstrate that leadership and that commitment. We need to be the voice of the poor and the vulnerable. And we also need to have bold leadership, again, as demonstrated by the champions that we are honoring tonight. I'm really, really pleased personally to be here tonight, and I thank you for being here, to joining us, and for continuing to join us in the fight against tuberculosis. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pablos Mendez, for your insightful remarks and for making the sartorial choice to wear that beautiful tie that you happen to be wearing. I decided to consult with your tailor and get the same tie myself. It's the TB tie, ladies and gentlemen. It's amazing that TB knows no boundaries. It can happen at any time to anyone. But it is good to hear that with greater investments, we can put a stop to this deadly disease. We're fortunate to have with us Jason Newman. Jez is an award-winning filmmaker who traveled to Swaziland to document firsthand accounts of lives impacted by TB. The film, TB Silent Killer, will air tonight on PBS at 10 p.m. on Frontline. Lucky for us, In a few moments, we get a sneak peek at some of the film's highlights. Jazza, please come up here and share with us what inspired you to make the film and what you have learned from this experience. Ladies and gentlemen, Jazza Newman.
Good evening, and thank you for coming. For the first time in 2 days, I'm nervous, and I think it's because I've got to compound 2 days into 2 minutes, so I'll do my best. We went to Swaziland, Rebecca Stewart and myself. We went to Swaziland, and we hooked up with a local guy called Sandile, who became our eyes and ears and our fixer translator for the making of this film. And the idea was to go to Swaziland and tell a story on a human level about the suffering that families were going through. I mean, respect to those people who are working hard in new R&D development and, as we heard before, the gene expert, but quite often, unfortunately, due to finances, people are playing catch-up right now. Even in Swaziland, we discovered that gene expert, there are strains of multi-drug resistant TB that aren't actually picked up by gene experts. So there really is, as was said before, there really is a need to develop more into this area. But my job was to go there and tell a human story, and we were really fortunate to manage to meet some amazing people. There was a young girl, Nokbega, who you'll see in a clip shortly, and her brother, Malusi. There was also Sandile and her brother, Begi. And the idea was to try and make Swaziland become closer to home, because obviously it's a big ask to ask someone coming home from a hard day at work or having looked after the kids all day to then sit down at 10 o'clock at night to watch an 80-minute hard watch. But through their stories that these families tell, it's really, there's a lot of humility to what they say, there's a lot of humility to their stories. Nokbega is the little 12-year-old girl who loves the color pink, she loves dolls, she loves dancing. Begi is the man who loves his soccer, he's a builder. But this disease tears their lives apart. You know, during the course of this film, there are journeys which are heart-wrenching. But at the same time, there are some journeys of positivity. And the reason for doing something like this is, time and time again, every advocacy group is producing reports on this subject. You know, it's not like these haven't been done before. But if we get the film right and we can produce this documentary, then if you put the report together with the documentary, it's something that's much harder to ignore. So effectively, this film, I hope, is the human face of the statistics. So I think that next we'll show a little bit of a clip and then we'll take it from there.
When they told me that she has TB, I felt so miserable. TB is the disease that can kill my sister.
This March, in a special presentation from the stirring landscapes of Swaziland in Africa, Frontline tells the story of a brave and struggling community that has let us into their lives.
They take us away from our homes so that we cannot be dangerous to the people outside.
To shed light on a new epidemic of a very old disease.
The treatment has got severe side effects, which makes it quite difficult for patients to adhere to the treatment.
A disease that is becoming resistant to treatment and is spreading.
In developed countries, they should be threatened with this worldwide spread of TB.
Anyone can get TB. Anyone can die from TB.
An intimate story of people fighting for their lives.
I am deaf because of TB. I lost my parents and my sister cause of TB. I've been out of school now cause of TB.
Isolated from those they love.
I miss my sister. I miss her a lot.
Stories of courage, loss, and hope that the world will hear.
In 21st century, we shouldn't have people dying from TB.
TB, Silent Killer. A special presentation coming March 25th to Frontline.
Ngesifo se-TB ngicabanga ukuthi siphatha wonke umuntu asikhethe. Ngoba nami ngimncane. Ngathi ukuthi singaphatha abancane ngoba banani.
When they told me that she has TB, I felt so miserable, so dejected, so bad. Because TB, I know TB, it is a common disease which destroys people. If TB isn't treated, it can eventually kill the individual. TB is the disease that can kill my sister. One day, a monk was sitting on the tallest tree in the forest. Oh my God! Forget it. He is the python.
Their mother died from a multi-drug-resistant mutation of tuberculosis known as MDR-TB. This form of the disease is far harder to treat. Melusi's greatest fear is that Nokubega may also have the drug-resistant strain.
So nice.
She is already being treated for regular TB. Today, the nurse is bringing news about her latest test results.
So Nokubega, sikhwehlela sakhe after afikile lesibhedlela sasi analyze akubuka ukuthi ugula unani ngoba bekagula khwehlela ngisho. Uthi teke nakakhwehlela Nokubega sakhanza ukuthi une TB. Okay. Sakhanza ukuthi le TB leseyikwamile. Okay. Kuba ne TB lile normal bese kuba na le TB leseyikwamile. Okay. So Nokubega una le TB leseyikwamile. Le TB ke leseyikwamile ayisa treatwa kalula njengale TB le normal. Okay. Yona sekudzingeka ukuthi ajove sikhathi lesithe ukhanza ukuthi kuba 4 to 6 months esikhathini lesiningi.
The brother and sister share one room, so to protect Melusi from catching the potentially lethal infection, Nokubega now has to go and live in an isolation hospital 2 hours away.
Yes, nayo vele inkinga. Uva njani sis ukuthi soye esibhedlela? Nokubheka. Sizathu ukuthi sithi hambe esibhedlela sifuna lokho ukuthi bakunakekele kahle. Yebo. But okhona ukujova kahle, but okhona ukuthi amaphilisi akho wanathe kahle. Kumcoka kakhulu ukuthi uye esibhedlela. Ungakhaya. Utophila. Yebo. Utophila. Utophila.
Nasiso sache sana mjova.
Yeah.
Nokbega, the little girl you see here, then goes on a journey that is one of sadness, but equally it is one that will inspire you, because with the smile on her face and the twinkle in her eyes, she overcomes her battle and fights through to the end. And I'd like to say, well, just very quickly, the only thing I could really promise the people that opened their hearts to me in this film was that whatever I did is I would do my best to make sure this film made a difference. And thank you tonight, because tonight you have all become part of me fulfilling that promise in trying to make a difference. Thank you.
Hopefully you, like me, set your DVR for 10 p.m. on the front line tonight. Otherwise, you can try to get home. Looking forward to watching this film in its entirety. Jeza, thank you so much for sharing with us and for doing your part to increase awareness about TB. I'm sure you will mobilize many viewers tonight to take action. We'd like to give you a prop for your next TB film.
Thank you.
The coveted TB tie.
Got the same tailor now.
It takes bold leadership to ensure that progress continues to be made in the diagnosis, treatment, and cure of TB. We gather this evening to recognize leaders who continuously demonstrate their commitment for creating a TB-free world. It is time for Dr. Pablos Mendes to present the Champion in the Global Fight Against TB Awards, and I'd like also to invite Joanne Carter to the stage to share a little background on the contributions that these distinguished leaders have made in raising awareness of TB and saving lives. Joanne is not only the Executive Director of Results, she's also the Vice Chair of the Stop TB Partnership and a longtime advocate for TB. Please welcome them.
So first I want to say, Jeza, as an advocate, the ability to bring people's stories in such a tangible way to so many more people is one of the most important things we can do to actually build support on this issue, both the impact of the disease and what we need to do to get better treatment. So thank you for that as an advocate. And then I just have to say I'm also thrilled. I'm a real fan of Kojo Nnamdi, so having him here as a TB advocate is a real honor, and we're really thrilled to have you. And it's also an honor for me to be able to acknowledge our congressional champions on TB. And I'm going to start with Senator Sherrod Brown. So Senator Sherrod Brown's a senior senator from Ohio. And throughout his career, he's been a committed leader on an array of critical global health issues, both domestically and internationally. But also for the last decade and a half, Senator Brown has been a leading champion on tuberculosis issues in Congress. He authored key pieces of legislation, including one of the first pieces of global TB legislation introduced. The bill which he introduced and championed in the Senate, and with leadership from Congressman Engel in the House, was passed into law in 2008 as part of the Lantos-Hyde Act, which was the reauthorization of the President's AIDS initiative. And this time, thanks to both of their leadership, it included a powerful TB focus with bold targets for ambitious TB scale-up, and also with targets for authorized funding that was commensurate with the scale of this disease. Senator Brown also championed some of the first U.S. funding for a mechanism called the Global TB Drug Facility, supported by USAID, which has now provided low-cost, high-quality TB drugs to over 90 countries and 18 million people. And I would just say, kind of at every opportunity, Senator Brown's urged his colleagues, this administration and prior administrations, to accelerate the fight. He has traveled to prisons in Moscow and Siberia and to rural Haiti to see the impacts of TB and also of treatment. And I would just say, Sherrod, that your efforts are really a testament to the impact that personal commitment and persistence can have. And last thing I would say is just we owe you one more congratulations, which is that you became a grandfather for the third time on Saturday, and with your first granddaughter, so congratulations on that as well. And thank you.
Mr. Newman, thank you for your using your talents, for your extraordinary talents for such important work. And Congressman Engel, thank you for the work that we've done together on this. And Dr. Pavlos Mendez, thank you for your terrific work. And I always wanted to see what Mr. Nnamdi looked like, because I've heard his voice for 15 years. And, you know, I thought he was 6'6". And, okay, and he was back when he was 28, right? So, Joanne, thank you. I first met Joanne 15 years ago and she came to me saying, as a member of the International Relations Committee with Elliot, said, you should be involved in anti-TB work. And I remember my dad, who was a general practice physician in small town Ohio. When I graduated from high school around that time in 1970, we were driving by this clinic that was just shuttered. And I said, what's that? And he said, it's a TB sanitarium. We don't have TB anymore in this country. He wasn't quite right about that, but mostly we didn't. And so I said that to Joanne, and she got me engaged in this. In the mid-late 1990s, the U.S. spent almost no money. We had just come through the New York public health disaster. And Joanne and Results took this issue that nobody was much paying attention to and was able to enlist people in the House and Senate to pay attention. She did it in part, and Results did it in part, by engaging their citizen lobbyists, mostly middle-class teachers and clerks and secretaries and IT people, and to write their congressman, to call Kay in Texas and Elliott in New York and me in Ohio. And there weren't many of them, but they were unrelenting. And they'd like call you in the middle of the night too, to be so, no, they didn't really do that, but they were pretty unrelenting. And they made such a difference. I mean, this fight against TB in our country is really a testament to citizen activism. On Martin Luther King Day, I heard a pastor say, and that's about this country, not international TB, but this pastor said, your life expectancy is connected to your zip code. And you think about South Texas, or you think about Appalachia, Ohio, and my state, or you think about inner city New York, and you see that your life expectancy in so many ways is connected to where you live. And it can be in Swaziland, or it can be in Cleveland, or it can be in rural southeast Ohio. And that's why the activism of Results and all of you, Dr. Castro, who helped to educate me on these issues over the last decade, and so many of you have made such a difference. And as Mr. Nnamdi said, I was listening to this, 22 million lives were saved. Maybe you said that. I don't know. I'm going to pass the quiz, whatever it is. 22 million lives have saved because of your activism. And I'll just close with this, and again say thank you that in the 1960s, a Mississippi civil rights leader said, don't tell me what you believe, show me what you do, and I'll tell you what you believe. And it's pretty clear that all of you that have been in combat against tuberculosis and saved millions of lives because of your engagement in the developing world, in our country, and everywhere on this planet have made such a difference in so many people's lives. So thank you for that.
Next, it's really my great honor to acknowledge Congresswoman Kay Granger. And Congresswoman Granger represents Texas 12th District, which includes the city of Fort Worth. And she's the chair of the very important House Foreign Operations Appropriations Subcommittee, which is the key committee responsible for tuberculosis funds, for the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, TB, and Malaria, and the President's AIDS Initiative, and a whole array of critical global health and development programs. And I just want to say that in her time as chair of that appropriations subcommittee, they faced hugely difficult decisions and challenging budgets. And I would say we are incredibly fortunate that Congresswoman Granger, as a leader and working with her colleagues on both sides of the aisle, has preserved and protected funding for TB and for global health more broadly. There's almost no one who's really been more responsible for some of the key increases in funding that we've seen in the last few years. And under her tenure, critical funding for USAID TB programs has actually increased, and funding for the Global Fund, the single largest funder of TB programs in the world, has also seen significant increases and is being matched 2 to 1 by other donors. And I would also say that Congresswoman Granger understands the importance of investing in TB globally in order to win this fight domestically as well. I mean, given the challenges in Texas is one of the states with the highest number of TB cases. And also, we're honored tonight to have one of our TB survivors from Texas and with his mom and with his grandmother, and here with us tonight, but also on the Hill, also, like Jezza, telling the story to make these issues real to people in this country so people understand the challenges of TB. I also just want to say that Congresswoman Granger has been a real champion for programs that benefit the most vulnerable, and particularly women and girls. And I think it's also particularly important that she's being honored tonight on this, because as a champion for TB, this is a huge issue for women. It's a huge issue for stigma that women face, and also an enormously unrecognized issue for children. And the Lancet, the medical journal, just came out with data showing that for children, the rate of TB is probably double what we actually thought it was. So, Congresswoman Granger, thank you so much for your leadership in this really tough fight, and we're really grateful for all that you've done to make the work on TB possible. So please, I'd like to have you.
I'm really honored to just be in the room with all of you, because you really are saving lives and doing amazing things. It's to think that with tuberculosis, we'd actually cut it in half. It's now in the last 2 decades, deaths from tuberculosis down 45%. In countries that we would say, well, they can't do this, like China, Cambodia, same thing. It's just enormous, enormous differences. And the Global Fund, I am so fortunate to be in the position I'm in, to really see what's happening out there. And that we really are, people are living longer and they're living healthier, and they're raising themselves out of poverty because we all work together. And that's really so much of the key to it, is we said, yeah, we're all going to work together. And so it's really, it has been remarkable. The program supported by the Global Fund, responsible for 6.1 million people receiving antiretroviral therapy. And I found the number, you should have used this one in your test, 360 million insecticide-treated bed nets have been delivered. And I've been able to deliver some, and I tacked it up in Africa on the wall, and it's just really an amazing difference. So thank you for this honor, but more than that, thank you for what you're doing and what you'll continue to do. It's saving lives and really making a huge difference. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you again. And now I'd also like to acknowledge Congressman Eliot Engel, who's also with us. And Congressman Engel represents New York's 16th Congressional District, parts of the Bronx and Westchester County. And he's ranking member on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and also sits on the Key Energy and Commerce Committee, including its Health Subcommittee. And Congressman Engel has been a longtime champion in the fight against TB, and has also led successful efforts on an array of domestic and global health issues. And I know he saw firsthand the dramatic impact of TB and the resurgence in New York City and in the Bronx in the late 1980s and early 1990s, when TB budgets had been cut in the prior decade. And I think it's certainly a lesson for all of us about the danger of complacency in the face of this disease. As I said before, Congressman Engel was the lead sponsor in the House of the Stop TB Now Act of 2007, and with his leadership, this legislation was passed into law as part of the reauthorization of the President's AIDS Initiative, and it provided that really ambitious legislative framework for U.S. efforts to fight global TB, and was really essential in elevating this issue. Congressman Engel is also the founding co-chair of the Bipartisan TB Elimination Caucus, which now has over 30 members, and he's led annual efforts to gather congressional support for domestic and international TB. Congressman Engel, thank you so much for your strong support and the impact that you've had on this issue and the commitment you've had over many years. So thank you. Please come on up.
Well, it's a beautiful award, thank you, and I really accept it. And of course, it's a beautiful location. It's something majestic about the Corcoran to have this here. And it's wonderful to be in the same league with my good friend Sherrod Brown, Senator Brown. We served together for many years in the House, and Kay Granger, chairwoman. She's done such a fantastic job in so many ways. And good to be here with all of you. I want to single out two of my staffers, one former staffer and one current staffer, Emily Gibbons and Heidi Ross, who taught and teach me everything I know about these issues. You know, those of us that are in elective office, we're only as good as the people behind us, and I have great people behind me. So I'm very honored to be here and very pleased to accept this award. Dr. Pablos Mendez, thank you for everything that you do as the Assistant Administrator for Global Health at USAID. I would also like to thank USAID, the Center for Global Health and Diplomacy, Results One, and the American Thoracic Society for not only hosting tonight's wonderful event, but for all the hard work that each of you have done in the fight against tuberculosis. Unfortunately, too many people in the world still fail to realize the horrific impact of TB worldwide. An estimated 1.3 million people lose their lives each year to a disease that can often be treated with relatively cheap medications. This is really just unacceptable. People think that people die because we don't have cures for certain diseases, and when we have cures and people don't get it and they die anyway, that's not something that I can live with, and I know that's nothing that anyone in this room can live with, and that's why we always have to keep up our fight against global TB. In an effort to increase U.S. support for international TB prevention and treatment activities, and also to promote research to develop new drugs, diagnostics, and vaccines, I was proud to introduce the Stop TB Act of 2007 and pushed hard to see its provisions included in the 2008 PEPFAR reauthorization. And while we have witnessed exciting new TB-related developments in the last few years, with GeneXpert being more widely deployed and the first new TB drug in over 40 years recently approved, obviously there's still much work to be done. So by co-chairing the TB Elimination Caucus, and I want to single out two of my colleagues who co-chair it with me, Rep. Jean Green and Rep. Don Young, we're doing our best to raise awareness and adequately fund TB research and treatment. But as you know, far better than any of us who were elected, it's going to take all of us working together to truly eliminate TB worldwide. And I look forward to continuing to work with each of you to make this ambitious but achievable goal a reality. And I promise you, I won't rest till we do. Thank you so much for this award.
All the best dressed people wear TB ties, you notice that. Joanne Carter, thank you so much, and congratulations to our congressional honorees. Can we have another round of applause for them, please? It is now my privilege to invite the Ambassador of Cambodia, His Excellency Hem Heng, to accept an award tonight on behalf of Cambodia's Ministry of Health for extraordinary progress in TB diagnosis and treatment. Please welcome His Excellency Hem Heng.
Dr. Pablos Pendes, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a great honor and privilege for me and for Cambodia to accept the Achievement Award on the TB control in Cambodia during this celebration. On behalf of the Royal Government of Cambodia, on behalf of the Ministry of Health, and on my own behalf, I would like to extend my high appreciation to USAID for organizing this very important event and for the selection of Cambodia as one of the awardees. As you know, Cambodia has been facing a lot of public health problems, especially communicable diseases such as HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria, and mother and child health, including the transmission of HIV/AIDS from mothers to children and lack of vaccines preventable diseases. Regarding tuberculosis, I would like to inform you that due to the collaborative efforts from all partners concerned, including USAID, impressive achievements have been made during the last 2 decades. I would like to inform you that over the last 5 years, USAID and Global Fund to Fight Against AIDS, TB, and malaria were the biggest donor of the National TB Control Program in Cambodia. The Cambodian government has been able to provide TB DOTS services in all public health facilities since 2004. Currently, 1,277 public health facilities are providing TB services. Consequently, the prevalence and death rate of TB have been reduced drastically. The prevalence of TB has decreased from the level of 1,670 per 100,000 people in 1990 to 817 in 2011, equal to 51% reduction, and further down to 764 in 2012, equal to 54% reduction, against the targets of 50% by 2015. This indicates that Cambodia has achieved MDG target for TB prevalence 4 years ahead of the schedule. Similarly, the death rate caused by TB has been reduced from 157 per 100,000 people to 65 in 2011 and to 63 in 2012, equal to 60% reduction, against a target of 50% reduction, which also demonstrates that MDG target-related TB deaths was also attained 4 years ahead of 2015. Ladies and gentlemen, despite great progress on TB control, Cambodia is still classified by WHO as one among the 22 countries with high burden of tuberculosis. Furthermore, Cambodia still has higher prevalence and death rates among these 22 countries. In the future, a lot has to be done in order for Cambodia to attain more achievement in TB control in line with the new global directions. So, of course, we need more resources to that end. In this regard, I would like to take this opportunity to request USAID to continue to support TB control activities in Cambodia. Ladies and gentlemen, the award being given to Cambodia is very invaluable. It is not merely a symbol of recognition of outstanding work, but also gives further encouragement to the Ministry of Health of Cambodia to combat tuberculosis in the country toward Cambodia free of TB, in line with global vision, which are a world free of TB, zero TB death, zero TB disease, and zero TB suffering. May I once again, on behalf of the Royal Government of Cambodia and the Ministry of Health, and my own behalf, I would like to take this special occasion to convey my deep thanks to the government of the United States of America and especially to the USAID for their kind assistance in many fields, especially in health sector, and more particularly for the selection of Cambodia to receive an achievement award in recognition of outstanding work in the fight against tuberculosis. Finally, may I wish all of you good health, happiness, prosperity, and great success. Thank you so much.
Thank you, His Excellency Hem Heng. I'd like now to invite Dr. Richard Chason to come up on stage to accept an award on behalf of CREATE. We honor the consortium for its leadership in furthering research that addresses the dual epidemics of HIV and TB in high-risk populations. Dr. Chason.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to meet Kojo. I thought I would get away without being asked any tough questions, but he started off right away with the tough questions. I'm very, very grateful to accept this on behalf of my colleagues from CREATE, colleagues at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, in Rio de Janeiro, in Johannesburg, the Western Cape, Zambia, Geneva at the World Health Organization, and at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, all of whom worked for the past decade to try to change the course of a catastrophic collision of HIV and tuberculosis in many parts of Africa, Latin America, and Asia. Our group has struggled to turn the tide against a disease which causes a quarter of all deaths in people with HIV, and HIV is the leading cause of death in people with tuberculosis, so this dual epidemic is extraordinarily challenging. Our work has shown that simple interventions like preventive therapy coupled with HIV care can reduce TB rates and death by 30 to 50% in Rio de Janeiro, that going to the households of people with tuberculosis and HIV in Zambia and South Africa can reduce the burden of TB in the entire community by 20% and TB infections in children by almost 50%. So we've learned a lot in the last decade, and I'd like to thank USAID. I'd like to note that our work actually began with seed funding from USAID back in the late 1990s to help pull together some of our partners and to start to formulate the important questions that we would face. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chason. I would now like to invite the TB survivors and their supporters to come up on stage. When I announce their names, you can read their very moving stories in your program. But please welcome Karen and Jake Kaufman and Dr. Felice Adler. Please welcome Myra Azarti and her son, London. As I said, you can find their amazing stories in your program, but I'd like to ask each of you survivors a question and would like for you to provide a one-sentence answer. That's the bad thing about being in broadcasting. You're always limiting the amount of time people can take to speak, but it is what it is. The question is, What is the most important thing the world needs to do to defeat tuberculosis? Jake, I'll start with you.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
What's the most important thing the world needs to do to defeat tuberculosis?
Well, I think one of the most important things is that the knowledge that, TB is really out there, and it's not just in foreign countries. It could be the person next to you, it could be your neighbor. People need to know that it's important to fund research for children, for adults, so TB can no longer be such a scary thing.
Thank you very much. Well said. Myra and London. Okay, just London.
I think for TB, the best thing would be kid-friendly medication, something that's not so strong on them. He was left with hearing disabilities because of the strong medication that's made for adults and not for kids. And that's something people don't notice, that kids need a lower dose and not as strong as the adult medication. So.
Thank you so very much. London, you sure you don't want to respond? Okay. But those are both great answers. All of you here on stage are an inspiration. Can we have a round of applause for all of these inspiring individuals? They get the coveted t-shirt. Thank you all so much. I'd like to invite Jessa Newman back on stage to accept an award from Joanne Manrick, President at the Center for Global Health and Diplomacy, one of our co-sponsors tonight. The center brings together leaders from the global health, diplomatic, and development communities to discuss global health challenges and develop innovative solutions to help protect vulnerable populations from disease.
Thank you so much. On behalf of the Center for Global Health and Diplomacy, we'd like to honor you with an award that we've honored to presidents, advocates, health ministers, and foreign affairs ministers. It really takes a lot of expertise to be able to translate the message of the advocates, not only to foreign leaders, but also to your average public, not only the people in this room, but the people outside these doors, who you need to convert. You can't continue preaching to the people in this room. You need to preach to those that aren't converted. So thank you so much for taking the message to the masses who really need to understand tuberculosis.
This is a complete honor and a complete surprise. Making any documentary is a team effort, though, and I'd have to give my thanks to the BBC for commissioning it, Frontline for coming on board, Team True Vision, and also particularly to Rebecca Stewart, my co-producer, and Sandile, who is our local fixer, driver, best friend, and he really was the eyes and ears to this film. And also the guys at Outpost at Frontline who did a fantastic job, Sandy, Jim, and the rest of the, Patrice, and the rest of the promotions team who helped get the message out there as well, and I think that's important. It takes everyone to get this message out there and to get this film out there. But I'd like to just swing back one more time to the people in my film. It takes a lot of guts for people like the survivors we saw tonight to come up here on stage. They're given one sentence to sum up what I barely did in 80 minutes. You know, and credit to them and credit with what they've gone through. I have ultimate respect for that. I know what they've been through. But I'd just like to leave you with one little moment, and I go on about how it's the people on the ground, it's the people like the survivors who can come out here and give us this message. For me, it's the people who took part in my film they're the brave ones, they're the great ones. I just captured them, but they let me into their lives with an honesty and integrity that at times you'll feel saddened, but in times you will feel inspired. And there is one moment when I was filming this film, and there is a sad moment in this film when a mother loses her child, and the child passes away, and Gogo, as she's referred to in the film, we arrived just at the time of the funeral, and Gogo, I thought, well, I've got to come and pay respects to Gogo. She's just lost her daughter, and we were very close to this family. And as I arrived at the gates of her compound, and I went in, and I was Gogo, and gave her a big hug, and she turned to me and says, Jezza, what are you doing here? Get down to the mortuary. Becky's collecting the body. You need to film this. You need to film this. This is part of our story, and you need to capture it. And that's where these people are. That is the investment the contributors put into this film, that in a moment of dire sadness, they are still thinking about how do we make this worthwhile? How do we get that message out there? And you've got to remember, everyone in this film, when you watch it, it's too late for them. The drugs, if they are developed now, they're not going to fix these guys in the film, but they were still prepared to put their lives out there, put it onto television, have a camera put into their lives in order to get a message out to benefit future generations. And for me, they're the real heroes. Thank you.
And now, last but certainly not least, we move on to the final award of the evening and a very special tribute to a TB superstar. I'd like to invite Rear Admiral Kenneth Castro to the stage as I hand over the mic to Dr. Pablos Mendes for the Distinguished Lifetime Award.
It's a special privilege and a personal delight to share this award, to convey this recognition to my friend Ken Castro. Ken has been a colleague, fundamentally. His leadership skill in tuberculosis for the last, he's been almost 30 years or so in CDC, most of that fighting tuberculosis. And I've been able to work with him for most of that career. And I can say that the effectiveness, because he's been incredibly successful domestically and globally, as I noted earlier, and that's because of his leadership style. He's a physician scientist and clearly rigorous on the evidence all the way. At the same time, his ability to work with people, his respect for others, a respectful representative of the United States governments abroad, but also an incredible leader from the CDC and just a friend. I think that Ken, we have gone through a lot of tough periods in the TB fight. There's a real fight. And lots of good things have been accomplished. And I think the year 2000, after a lot of the leadership from the US, then became an important year. And Ken was central to make sure the community came together. In many other areas, you see parts in the Stop TB partnership, we have actually come together. A lot of pieces have moved, and Ken has been behind almost each of those pieces. And personally, I just want to thank you, Rear Admiral Ken Castro, someone who came from Puerto Rico, worked in the Bronx, where I also worked for a while. And again, it's been a story of success, a life story of success, and something for which we are deeply, deeply appreciative. And although he will be retiring from the CDC, we certainly hope that we're going to continue to tap his leadership, his talent, and his friendship as we continue to work on tuberculosis. Ken, thank you.
Thank you. I'm deeply honored, humbled, and grateful for this recognition. And what I'd like to do is two things with this award. First of all, dedicate it to the people who were called upon to serve, such as those that we saw depicted in the films, those who've come up and lent their voices, very much needed, to what has been until recently a fairly faceless disease in our country. Secondly, I need to accept this on behalf of all the hard workers who day in and day out in every city of the world are looking for people afflicted with tuberculosis to bring them life-saving interventions, and in the process establish these bonds with patients, learn about lifestyles, try to support them through the rigors of taking some long therapy, in my opinion, too damn long, and we need to change that with some of the research. Having lived personally through my own career and witnessed the remarkable achievements we can proudly claim against the HIV and AIDS, I think that we need to aspire for no less in tuberculosis in bringing some better drugs, shorter therapy for people with both drug-resistant and drug-susceptible TB. Those of you who know me know that I also tend to have a sense of irreverent humor, and there's something awkward about accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award. I ain't dead. And just take this as a lifetime in uniform. My plan is to retire from the uniform service after 31 years of service, but I'll regrow my beard, given that it's no longer within the grooming standards of the U.S. Public Health Service. And I do intend to continue fighting, and I will take the words of Congressman Engel. You have my promise that I will not rest until our work is done and TB is eliminated. I also want to acknowledge all of you who've been recognized because of the work that you're doing on behalf of the citizens of our country and of the world. If it weren't for your support, we wouldn't be doing any of our work. So I very much appreciate that. I must also acknowledge my colleagues at CDC who are passionately dedicated with a unity of purpose in our fight against tuberculosis. So many of you who are part of the federal U.S. government task force, NIH, USAID, HRSA, all our partners in crime as we try to rid the world of this scourge. So I'm humbled and honored by the award. I will treasure it, but it's really dedicated to the people who we serve and accepted only on behalf of all of you who do the work. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this evening's program. Or maybe one last question that I know you won't get because everybody in my family knows it. So what's the name of my cousin in Guyana, South America, who's a TB survivor? I knew you wouldn't get that. Cousin Olga. As we heard tonight, the promise of a TB-free world is on the horizon. So let's all be a part of history. Let us each commit to do our part to wipe this deadly disease off the map within our lifetime. But before we go this evening, let us all gather in the rear again where we can have refreshments and a little tidbits of food and enjoy one another's company for just a little while. So thank you all for coming tonight, and good night.